How's it going, everybody? It's Patil family. We are back with another FPL video, sort of, but we do this every year. It is our Premier League prediction time. We're going to take a look at who we're going to predict from 1st to 20th through the Premier League's upcoming 2023-2024 season. We'll take a look at all kinds of things like Young Player of the Year, Flop of the Season, Surprise of the Season, who's going to get sacked first, and much, much more. We do these predictions every year, and we always react to them in the basically the postseason, off season, whatever you want to call it. Basically, when it's the summertime, so it's just a bit of fun. So we'll see how we shape up this year. But I got my little notepad in front of me with all my little keynotes for everything that we need to place everyone in the Premier League from 1st all the way down to 20th, and who's going to win all the different cups. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so we have our tier list maker up in front of us. We have the Premier League champions at the top 4, which is going to be 2nd through 4th. We have 5th and 6th, which is currently the Europa League spots. We'll get onto that in just a bit. 7th and 8th, so that would be Conference League and just missing out. 9th and 10th, 11th through 13th, 14th through 17th, and relegation, which is 18th through 20th. We have all the teams down below here, as you can see. Newly added Luton Town, Burnley, as well as Sheffield United. So we have all the teams in there, and we're probably going to start from the bottom as we normally do. Now, as I see fit, based on the competition or the team that we're talking about, I will basically put in a note if they're like, if I think they're going to win the Premier League or whatever. But or if they're going to win the Champions League or Carabao Cup, that sort of stuff. We'll basically mention them. So let's start from the bottom, basically, because I think that's probably a little bit easier. And I think there's some candidates here for sure. Typically, if you guess all 3 teams that just came up, most times you'll be right. Last season, you wouldn't have been, but I think this season's a little bit easier. I think the teams that are coming into the Premier League this season are not as strong or getting depleted as we speak. And I think one of those teams is definitely going to be Sheffield United. I think they're going to probably be 20th or 19th. I'm going to go with 20th personally in my list. And I think the reason being is because it looks like Sander Berg, as the time of recording, which is August 7th. Looks like he could be on his way out to another team that's just been newly promoted, which is Burnley. They lost Ndiaye to Marseille. And I just think that their squad is quite thin. And I just don't see them doing what they did under the previous kind of regime, as it were, when they were up in the Premier League last time. I just think that... who's the manager? What was his name? I can't remember off the top of my head. It'll come to me in a sec. I can picture him clear as day. But yeah, I just don't think their squad is nowhere near Premier League level, and I think they'll probably go straight back down. But they do have kind of like the old heads in there that will be able to get them up probably the following season. Next, we're also going to go with newly promoted Luton Town. I'm going to go with them in 19th. I think that, the whole home crowd sort of thing is probably going to only get them so far. I think they'll be exciting to watch, but I think they're probably going to take a good few batterings when they do go up against teams that do know how to use the ball well. And I think that, like I said, the home atmosphere will probably get them a few wins here and there, but I don't think it'll be enough to keep them up as well. And then lastly, this might surprise a few, but I've actually gone with Wolves to get relegated as well. I've gone with them in 18th, and I think that basically stems from the fact that Julian Lopetegui, or Lopetegui, I don't know how you pronounce his name, but he is probably going to be my first manager sacked, and that could just be him literally leaving before the first game of the season, or him basically leaving straight after the United game, possibly, if they were to be handed a heavy defeat. And I think that's mainly due to the fact that he is basically at outs with the board, not spending any money, and them saying that they really can't spend any money. They're in a very similar situation to Everton, where they're kind of just trying to ride it out and then seeing if they can survive a couple more seasons. But I don't think that's going to be the case this time, especially if Lopetegui were to leave. So me personally, I think he'll be the first manager sacked, and I think that Wolves will be the last team to be relegated. Moving into 17th, I've gone with Everton again. They're probably just going to scrape it. Sean Dyche will do what Sean Dyche does, which is get just barely enough points to stay in the Premier League. They really do need to strengthen in the forward line, particularly a striker who can stay fit. Dominic Calvert-Lewin has had his injury woes again in pre-season, and I think that they're really going to have to manage him or get another striker because Neal Maupay just is not the answer. They could play newly signed Danjuma through the middle. But I just don't think that long-term that could help them out. They need a proper striker who can just be on the end of crosses, really, which is kind of akin to Sean Dyche's kind of play style. Chris Wilder, by the way, was the Sheffield United manager. I knew I would get the name eventually. Moving into 16th, I'm going with Nottingham Forest. And I think that with the likes of Gibbs White, I think with Awani, if he stays fit, I think they'll definitely have enough firepower to score goals, especially at home. It's just their defense is what concerns me quite a bit. They could easily, swap with Wolves. They could easily swap with Sheffield United. It just kind of depends. And I know Mark Southerns, who talked on Correspondent Week on the Planet FPL channel. He's also part of Black Box. You would know him quite well if you've watched our channel as well as any FPL content ever. He is the godfather of FPL, really. He is very concerned about their defense going into game week 1 versus Arsenal. And he basically said that they're going to have probably a defense that's never played together before going into game week 1 because all of their mainstays are out injured or there are injury doubts going into game week 1. But I still think Forest have enough attacking outlets with Gibbs White, with Awani, and with potential others coming in. Elanga was probably going to be an astute signing that they could hit teams on the break and get a goal here or there, which could nick them a few points and help them stay comfortably out of the relegation zone. Next, I've gone with Bournemouth in 15th. It was a big surprise to see Gary O'Neill get sacked, but I think, again, Bournemouth, another team, maybe not necessarily defensively sound, but they still will score a decent number of goals. And for teams down the bottom, scoring goals is definitely a good valuable asset to have. Solanke is a very solid forward, often stays quite fit. Billing can get goals from midfield. And I think with their new style of play under the new management, they could be a team that surprises a few. And they could be anywhere from 15th all the way up to even 12th potentially. But again, they could also just be too attacking and then concede 4 goals before they even get a chance to get off the ground. And then it could just be, what everyone was thinking was happening to Bournemouth, myself included, last season of them getting relegated. And then 14th to round out this bracket here, I've gone with newly promoted Burnley. I think that Vincent Kompany has done a fantastic job with them, revitalizing Burnley. This is not going to be the Burnley of seasons gone by of Sean Dyche. This is going to be front foot forward, attacking style of football. And I think these 3 teams in particular, Forest, Bournemouth, and Burnley, will have some potential cheap FPL assets that we can look at when their fixtures are good. Forest tend to be a little bit more kind of reserved in their attack, but Bournemouth and Burnley will be ones that'll be a lot more on the front foot, and will probably catch some teams off guard with how kind of forthright they are with their attack. Looking down at my list here, in 13th, I've got the Hammers. I've got West Ham. I think they'll regress, not necessarily regress, but they'll probably improve slightly. Last season, they ended up around this position. I want to say it was like 14th or 15th. So they'll be around a similar place. I've gone with 13th here. I think they'll do okay in the Conference League. Declan Rice is obviously a massive loss to them, but it looks like they could be on the way to getting the likes of Scott McTominay and Harry Maguire, who will be in David Moyes' system. Quite effective, actually, because Harry Maguire and Scott McTominay are very good at when the ball is crossed into their own area and they're defending on a deep line. They're very good at heading it out and getting in the way. So when they have to play out from the back, a little bit different. A bit more tricky. So I think Harry Maguire will look a lot better. I think it's definitely good for him going into a Euros year next summer. And I think he needs to get the playing time. So I think it'd be a good move for both parties, as well as Erik ten Hag looks to kind of change the kind of system as well. And I think Harry Maguire will do good with a change of scenery as well. Whether the asking price will be there, who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But I think West Ham will do good this season. Moving into 12th, I've gone with Crystal Palace. And if you watch Correspondent Week on Planet FPL, basically, Crystal Palace seem to always finish 12th. So I've gone with them finishing 12th. Elise is currently out at the moment. They have sold Wilfried Zaha, but I think they're still a decent enough team to where they're still going to hit teams on the break, score some goals, and do quite well. Pretty straightforward answer, to be honest. And Essays look good, so at 6.5 million, he could be quite good as well. In 11th, looking down at my list here, I've gone with Fulham. Where is Fulham? Is Fulham on the list here? Fulham's not even here. Where's Fulham? They've left out Fulham. We'll just pretend Fulham's there. Fulham is in 11th. I don't know why Fulham's not there. Let me make sure I have 10 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, they just literally left off Fulham for some reason. But Fulham is in 11th. I think that the loss of Mitrovic, which seems to be somewhat inevitable at the moment, we'll see a slight regression for them. But Marco Silva is a good manager. He's staying on for them. He had offers from Saudi Arabia, and he has rejected those. And I think that he has a style of play which, with the players that he has at his disposal, will be able to get the points that they need to be comfortably in and around mid-table. I think there was a bit of a drop-off from, once Mitrovic got suspended, but I still think, with Raul Jimenez, if he can get something out of him, he scored a goal in preseason, looked decent as well. Andres Pereira was fantastic last season. Harry Wilson could take a step further as well. They could be looking good. So I have Fulham in 11th, and unfortunately, they're not on this table. So sorry, Fulham fans. In 10th, I've gone with Brentford. I think Brentford, even without Ivan Toney, still have the capability of beating teams quite easily. Just their system just shows that they are very, very good on the transition. They're good at what they do. Them and Brighton, just when it comes to getting players, they will often buy somebody, and they're probably going to be good. They've signed Flecken as well in goal, who's going to be the long-term replacement probably for David Raya, who looks to be on the move potentially to Arsenal, which is a bit of an interesting one as well. But yeah, I think Brentford will end up in 10th place, which I think is one place less than what they were in the last season. So, but again, that's a fantastic season for Brentford again, and especially without having Toney for the first part of it. In 9th place, I've gone with Newcastle, but there is a caveat, and I'll come back to it. I've gone with Newcastle, and the reason I say this because the top 9 spots are super, super difficult to pick, really. And I could look like a fool. Newcastle could come first. I don't know, but I think their squad is very good. I think they'll pay attention a lot to the Champions League if they can. They are in pot 3, I want to say, which could make them be in a little bit of a difficult group. So that could be a bit tricky for them. But I think the second season kind of syndrome type thing, they got the hype of getting top 4. They also were filming a documentary at the time as well. Can Eddie Howe potentially push them further? I think 9th and potentially a good run in any European competition will be a successful season for them. I think they definitely overachieved massively last season because a lot of basically pundits or FPL managers or just football heads in general would not have expected Newcastle to be in the top 4 starting as of last season. So I think they'll be 9th, but again, I will change that. This is going to be a caveat in that as well. In 8th, looking down here, I've gone with Villa. I don't think I'm hyping Villa up enough, to be honest. But I think 8th is still a good season as well for Villa. They will definitely make a very deep run, and I think they'll actually probably win the Conference League as well, which they are in. They'll either make a super deep run, whether it be quarterfinals or later, or they'll win the whole thing. But I'm going to go with them winning the whole thing because Unai Emery's just very good at winning the Europa type competitions, really. So that's who I've gone with there. In 7th, I've gone with Brighton. Again, European competition for the first time. Maybe a slight regression They again could still go decently well in Europa League. I haven't picked them to win it though, but I have gone with them to be 7th. It'll be 2 places drop down, but I think there's a couple other teams that underperformed last season that will excel this coming season. And one of those could be Spurs. Now, I put Spurs in 6th place, and this is the one caveat I have in this whole list, that Harry Kane is still at Spurs. And at the time of recording, they rejected a €100 million bid from Bayern Munich. So it looks like Kane could be staying. And the way he was playing versus Shakhtar Donetsk on Sunday in their friendly, scoring 4 goals, he looked really, really good. And with the forward line of Son and Kane and Kulusevski and Maddison, he could be absolutely electric. So, with that also being said, I think in terms of FPL's top point scorer, that could also be Harry Kane as well if he were to stay. I think just with Maddison potentially providing, the kind of service he needs to the lack of creative midfielder for so long in Spurs' team, Maddison could definitely provide that. He provided 2 assists in that friendly. It's just a matter of can Maddison stay fit as well. He's had his injury concerns, but if they do, they could be one of the most threatening teams. And under Postecoglou, who's just constant attack always, all the time, it could be really exciting for Spurs this season. They could get some absolute beatings at times, no doubt about that, because they are very threadbare at the back. But going forward, they can beat teams 4-3 if they wanted to. And I've also gone with Kane to be player of the year if he is obviously staying in the Premier League, with the caveat that if he's not, it's going to probably be Erling Haaland. It's going to be player of the year. I think it would be FPL top point scorer if Kane were to leave. And I also think Haaland is going to win the Golden Boot regardless. I think Kane will be more assist heavy as well as goals, which will get him more points in general. But I think Erling Haaland will be probably, if Kane were to leave, he's going to be the player of the year again, most likely. He's going to be FPL top point scorer, and he'll be the Golden Boot winner, I think, regardless if Kane is there or not, because he kind of scored a lot of goals last season. So pretty straightforward there. In 5th place, now this may surprise a few. Actually, before we do that, I forgot about the caveat. So the caveat would be, if Spurs were to lose Harry Kane, I would basically bump up all these teams. So I would put Brighton in 6th, I put Aston Villa in 7th, I put Newcastle in 8th. And those could be literally in any order, really. And then Spurs would drop down to 9th, basically, is how I do it. So that is the caveat. Another caveat that I also forgot to mention is I think the Europa League, now this requires some very interesting finagling, I think Newcastle could win the Europa League. And this is obviously under the circumstances that they were to get knocked out of the Champions League, coming 3rd in their group, which is highly possible considering they do have... or can potentially have a very tough group. And if that is the case, they come 3rd. They are easily good enough to win the Europa League with no problems whatsoever. So that's why I've gone to win the Europa League. If it's picking somebody in the Europa League, basically, I'd probably say Brighton or Liverpool, to be honest. But I'll go with Newcastle in that off chance. Let's see, looking down at my list here, so we've gone through that. Let's go to 5th place. So we're going to go with, in 5th place, we have Arsenal. Now, there's going to be a lot of fans talking about, oh, Arsenal came 2nd last season. They were top for 250 billion days. They should have won the league, but they didn't. So I think that Arsenal's signings, personally, have made them, they've made them better. But I think that now that Arsenal now have to pay attention more to Europe, and they're now going to not be able to get away with, hey, look, we can just play a second-string team in the Champions League. You can't get away with that in the Champions League. Yeah, there's some groups where you can do it against weaker opposition, but the teams are in the Champions League for a reason, because they're all pretty good teams, all things considered. And I think Arsenal will see a regression. Now, with that being said, 5th place is still potentially possible a Champions League position this upcoming season. I think it is decently likely that is a possibility. There's all kinds of different kind of configurations where this is possible. And I think that's mainly due to like the changing of how the coefficient's going to work for the 2024-2025 season. And I think England's Premiership teams could get an extra spot. So 5th might not actually be that bad. And we'll know more probably around like the February, March, April period. So 5th is still a decent enough season for Arsenal. Did I predict them to win any trophies? Let me see. No, I didn't have anything for them. But I did have one thing, which is, it's not great for them, obviously. But I did have Gabriel Jesus being my flop of the season. I have Richarlison last season, got it right. But I think Gabriel Jesus looks like he's becoming a player that's super injury prone. And he's someone who is not just delivering. Is playing center forward. He seems to be dropping way too deep when he does play. And I just don't think the output is going to be anywhere near what it was like at the start of last season. He's currently injured at the moment. Could be out for a few weeks if you're believing what Arteta's saying. So I think Gabriel Jesus is going to be the flop of the season in that regard. When Arsenal definitely need a consistent man up front scoring the goals. For the top 4, I have gone with... Where are they to? Maurizio Pochettino's Chelsea. I've gone with them in 4th place. I think they could be quite exciting this season. I think they have the squad depth to do well. Even without European competition this season, they could be like the Arsenal of last season, a young, energetic team that's been completely revamped that could just do really, really well. So I put them at 4th, so we'll see how that goes. And Nkunku is potentially injured for... it could be a decent while, actually. There are reports that potentially could be a couple months, which would be a huge blow to them. But they do have the talent, young talent around, especially if they get Caicedo, where they could just be a super exciting team to watch this season. So keep an eye on that. And Jackson looks pretty good in preseason as well. So he could be really good in FPL at 7 million. In 3rd place, I've gone with Liverpool. Now, Liverpool at the time of recording have not resolve their defensive midfield issues. Now, everyone was talking about Liverpool need a defensive midfield or a midfield revamp. I was preaching this last season as well. I also think they still need to strengthen a bit at center back as well, especially for coverage if Van Dijk or Konate were to go down. But Liverpool at the time of recording only have Szoboszlai and McAllister in midfield that they have signed. They do not have the signing of Romeo Lavia, who seems to be on their books, but they also still need another defensive midfielder past that as well, because the likes of Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott, and I can't remember, there's another young kid that comes from the academy as well. I can't pronounce his name, to be honest, but I don't think that's going to cut it, really. They need another defensive midfielder or two. They basically got rid of every midfielder they had last season, with the likes of James Milner leaving at Brighton. Jordan Henderson's gone to Saudi Arabia. Oxlade-Chamberlain's left as well. Naby Keita's left. You know, they've had many midfielders leave. Even Fabinho's left as well, who was a long-standing DM for them. So I think they need to get a couple more signings through the door, but I think they will get those, hence why I've gone with them in 3rd. They're probably less defensively solid than the likes of Arsenal or Chelsea even. Them and Spurs could be the weakest defensively in the kind of the top 6. But I think Liverpool looks like they could potentially be scoring the most goals. They do score a lot of goals, and they're going to be doing the days of old with Klopp where they need to score 4 goals and they'll win 4-3. I also have the surprise package of the season coming from Liverpool as well. That's going to be Darwin Núñez, I think. I think Darwin Núñez has looked pretty good in preseason. I think he could be very good in FPL at his price point at 7.5 million. If Jota gets injured, which he seems to do quite a bit, he could be the mainstay in the front line. And it seems like the guy in the front line is the one that's in the middle, is the one getting all the goals. And that seems to be like Jota in preseason. Salah's getting a lot of assists as well, which is why I'm still interested in him in fantasy Premier League as well. But I think Darwin Núñez could be the surprise package. So we've gone with him. Moving into the top 2, I've gone with the 2 Manchester clubs. And of course, I predicted City in first, obviously. I think Manchester City are going to be Premier League champions. That'll make them 4-time champions. I've also predicted them to win the FA Cup as well as the Premier League. Not to do the treble again, because we don't want to see that. That is going to be something slightly different, which I think could be a bit more interesting. But let's go back to Manchester United. So I think the young player of the season is going to be Rasmus Højlund. I think he's going to be quite good when he comes in. He's exactly what Ten Hag wants, a very young, energetic, forward-thinking, team-oriented forward that does have an eye and a hunger for goal, and I think he'll be the young player of the season. I also think Manchester United will repeat and win the Carabao Cup as well, because Manchester United squad is kind of suited for that. They can be a bit flexible in some positions to allow for youngsters to shine, like Kobe Mainoo, Alejandro Garnacho, Amad Diallo when he's back fit. These sorts of players will get game time, and I think they're good enough to kind of keep the ball rolling in the Carabao Cup. City squad is a bit thin currently at the moment, especially in the wide areas and midfield areas. Liverpool, Klopp tends to just kind of play all youngsters in it. Arsenal probably going to be focused a lot more on Champions League. It's the first time they've been in it for a while. Chelsea probably also has a chance as well. I would have put them high up on the list. Spurs, again, maybe, but probably not as much. It's probably their best chance to win a trophy, I would think, if they can nick one mid-season. But yeah, I think United did quite well last season. They also got a decent enough road there. So I think that United could win the Carabao Cup. Højlund will be the young player of the year. And I think United will end up finishing second. And then that leaves Premier League champions, obviously Manchester City. I think they'll win the FA Cup as well. But they won't be the ones to win the Champions League, because I think that Real Madrid will win the Champions League. Now, this may seem pretty obvious and like, hey, look, they've won it 14 times. Why do you pick them? But I think Real Madrid can be so flexible with their newly shaped midfielders. I mean, they have Ernesto Valverde, Aurelien Tchouameni, Eduardo Camavinga, Luka Modric, Toni Kroos, and newly signed Jude Bellingham. And they can play them basically anywhere with Rodrigo and Vinicius, and they are super, super terrifying. Also, they have one of the best goalkeepers in the world in Courtois, who's bailed them out many of times. So I think they could beat literally any team. They're just super, super energetic, super, super young in the midfield area now. If you had asked any team if they wanted any one of their midfielders, you'd be happy. But they have those 6 that are just absolutely brilliant. It's going to be exciting to see how they develop. And I just think Real Madrid, just somehow they always just kind of get it done in the Champions League. Potentially with City, maybe if they don't have as much depth in the wide areas, maybe they can't bring in a Mahrez and just kind of play him in the Champions League all the time. Even though they're kind of lessened last season. But without Gundogan, his leadership... he was the captain last season as well, on their way to winning the treble. De Bruyne's had more and more injuries, so that makes them slightly weaker in the midfield area. I think Kovac is a good signing, but I don't think he's Gundogan. Bernardo Silva still potentially could go. Mahrez has left, so you're looking at the likes of Phil Foden and Grealish playing every game. Again, Foden's had his injury concerns, and then you're just looking at Cole Palmer, who, yes, scored a good goal in the Community Shield, but again, could still be a bit kind of iffy there. I think City are slightly thin in the midfield and forward areas at the moment. First team, I mean, they can beat anyone literally, but I think Real Madrid's just diversity in midfield, where they just basically have every type of midfielder possible with the most amount of energy. They could cause some serious problems, but that still doesn't stop City from winning the domestic double with the FA Cup and the Premier League, and then becoming 4-time Premier League champions. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think my predictions are crazy? Do you think they're completely out of whack? We will have to wait and see. And again, I said the one caveat was that Spurs would basically be like 9th and Newcastle would move up, and if Kane were to stay. So there's a few caveats there, but for the most part, I think I've got a decent set of predictions here. I will know next May, June, July, whenever we do the reaction. So let me just think down in the comments below. And that's been this video for our Premier League predictions for the upcoming 23-24 FPL, EPL, Premier League season. Welcome to the Fantasy Football Scout members area, the one place that you need to be tuned into for the upcoming FPL season. It has a wide variety of resources and tools that will help improve your FPL game today. It has a bunch of different members-only articles written by some of the best FPL managers across the globe, heat maps for all the players and positions, as well as player comparison tools, which will help you see side by side who is going to be more effective for your FPL team, fully customizable stats tables powered by Opta stats, and much, much more. Use the link down in the description below so that you can get access to the Fantasy Football Scout members area today. It'll help improve your FPL game. And that's going to do it for our 2023-24 Premier League predictions. Let me just think down in the comments below. Make sure to like, favorite, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. For PilotFlame226 on all platforms. Also, make sure to go check out Fantasy Football Scout. I believe they still have 30% off for their membership area. Make sure to check it out, fantasyfootballscout.co.uk, or you can use the link in the description. Helps me out. It'll help you out too. Help improve your FPL game. So make sure to check that out as well. And we will also be doing a stream on Thursday. That'll be the evening before the first game of the Premier League season between Burnley and Manchester City. So make sure to check out that. We're going to be doing a live stream and revealing our team for that as well. We also have an updated draft video. If you haven't watched that already, it could either be out or be out tomorrow. Have to wait and see. Well, make sure to check that out as well as all the other content we've been doing in the preseason. So make sure to check all that out. Thank you all for watching, and until next one, take care.